Today's movie recommendation is The Platform. This is a special kitchen. The chefs are preparing a feast for the prisoners. David wakes up from his bed to find an old man sitting across from him. In the middle of the room is a huge hole. David looks into the pit and sees no bottom. He then looks up and sees no top either. David and the old man shake hands and introduce themselves. The old man's name is George. David asks George what the hole is for. George tells him that the hole is for eating. Sometimes there's plenty of food. Sometimes there's nothing, because everyone on each floor eats from the same platform. Fortunately, the 48th floor is considered decent. David shouts down to the people on the lower floor. George advises him not to talk to them. The people below don't want to respond because they're on the next level down, and the people above won't bother because they're on the level above. George tells David that they will stay on this level for a month. After a month, they will be reassigned to a new floor. A table with leftover food descends from above. With limited time, George hurries to start eating. David ends up taking only an apple and puts it in his pocket. As mealtime ends, the table starts descending to the next level. George finishes by spitting. Suddenly, David feels the room getting hotter. George says it will keep getting hotter until we're both burnt to a crisp. Because food can't be hoarded, David throws away the apple he was hiding. David came here to quit smoking. When given the choice to bring one item, David chose to bring a book, Don Quixote. George had to choose between going to a mental hospital or coming here because he killed someone. George chose this hole. George chose a samurai sword as his item. Mealtime arrives. George hurries to start eating. David, who hasn't eaten for 2 days, decides to eat something today. On another day, mealtime comes again. Today, there's a woman at the table. David wants to comfort the woman who looks pitiful. George tells him not to bother. She comes down every month to look for her son. The woman on the table was carried down and raped by 2 men. David shouted to the lower level to stop them. David, too scared to jump down, watched as the woman climbed back onto the table. David finds himself tied to the bed. George tells him we're on level 171 and he should prepare himself. George tells David they won't kill him right away because the meat wouldn't be fresh. Another person couldn't bear it and jumped down from above. The table descended again. There was nothing left on the table. George tells David to try not to kill him. In 8 days, he'll take a piece of flesh from his thigh to eat. For several days, there was no food on the table. Unable to bear the hunger, George decides to cut flesh from David today. The table descends. The woman appears on the table again. Just as George is about to eat, the woman knocks him down from behind. The woman picks up a knife and slashes George's throat. David is released by the woman. David picks up the knife and kills George. David sees the woman eating George's flesh. Eventually, David also eats the human flesh the woman feeds him. The woman sits on the table and goes to the next level. To survive, George can only eat rotten meat. In an hallucination, George tells David there's no way out. Either eat or be eaten. George mocks David, saying they're both murderers. He considers himself more civilized. Finally, after enduring for a month, George finds himself on level 33. Another woman, with a dog, arrives in the room. George remembers her as Lisa, that interviewer. Food on level 33 is plentiful. David can finally feast. This movie is worth recommending. It's called The Platform.